The RavenEye gives your RS2 loads of new features, but after taking it out of the box, you're pretty much left to figure it out on your own. The manual and documentation online is pretty limited and will leave many questions unanswered. With that being said, let's take all of this stuff off and build the RS2 with the gimbal and the camera, just so we can walk through, because there are a couple steps. If you do them incorrectly, none of this stuff will work. So it's really frustrating, but let's go through this together and figure out how to mount our RavenEye to the RS2 and our camera. So now that we've disassembled all of the parts, we're gonna start by locking the arms of the RS2 and put your camera on the gimbal. Don't balance your camera yet, because we're going to be adding the transmitter and cables, and all of this will throw your balance off. Also, make sure your gimbal is in sleep mode if you're locking the arms while it's on. Put the RavenEye on the bottom of the gimbal and make sure it clicks into place, and make sure that the antennas are facing out. We want the cold shoe to mount to the bottom of the gimbal, and the antennas should be on the opposite side of the arm. The cold shoe on the bottom of the RS2 makes a secure connection to the cold shoe on the top of the RavenEye. Make sure to slide it over and click it into place so it's not moving around at all. As far as antenna placement, I keep my antennas tucked, and I haven't had any issues with using the app from the same room within 20 to 30 feet of the gimbal. If you're farther away and you're experiencing some dropouts, flip these antennas out and you will get a better reception to the Ronin app from your RavenEye. Now we'll attach the HDMI cable from your RavenEye to your camera. This is how your RavenEye gets a feed and sends it to the Ronin app. So make sure to select the correct HDMI cable from your camera. My A7 III uses a Micro-HDMI. Next, we'll attach our USB-C cable from the RavenEye to the bottom port of the USB-C slots on our RS2. I like to use the right angle cable coming from the RavenEye. It just kind of tidies the cable management up a little bit. And I put the straight cable coming from the other end of the RavenEye into the bottom port of the USB-C ports on the RavenEye. Putting this cable into the wrong slot will give you some weird issues that don't really come up as issues in the app or on the back of the screen. So I'll touch on this a little bit more later, but this can cause problems if you put this cable in the wrong slot. To have access to our camera from the gimbal and the Ronin app, we're going to want to use the appropriate camera control cable. I'll be using the USB-C to USB-C cable for my camera, but make sure to check that compatibility list below just to see which cable you should be using. So plug in your cable to the camera and then your USB-C cable. I like to route in front of the camera under the lens between the quick release plate, and I put this in the top slot on the RS2. Putting it in a different slot will give you results that you don't want. So make sure you're putting the camera control cable in the top slot on your RS2. Now that we have our camera control cable in the top slot and our RavenEye cable in the bottom, you might be wondering what the second or middle slot is for. And that is for the 3D focus module. I don't have access to that yet. It's all sold out everywhere. So I will do another video on that when it comes out, but the middle slot is for that 3D focus. With everything set up, we can balance our gimbal and connect to the Ronin app. If you haven't downloaded the Ronin app yet, do so now and log into your account. To turn the RavenEye on, you'll want to press and hold this back button until all of the lights turn on and the light turns red. Once the light turns blue, that means your RavenEye's Wi-Fi network is available and you can connect to it. And when it turns green, that means your device is connected to the RavenEye. Opening your device's Wi-Fi, connect to the RavenEye Wi-Fi network. If this is your first time doing it, you'll be asked for a password, and you can find the password on the back side of the RavenEye right next to the power button. It's recommended to turn off Bluetooth while you're using the RavenEye, so instead of toggling on and off Bluetooth every time I connect to my RS2, on iOS I went to my settings, Ronin app, and turned off Bluetooth just for the Ronin app. This is nice because I don't want to have to toggle on and off Bluetooth every time I'm using my RS2 and RavenEye, and then when I'm done, turn it back on. So right now, the Ronin app will not have access to Bluetooth. But if you're going to connect to your RS2 without the RavenEye, leave Bluetooth on because that's how you can connect to your RS2. After connecting to your RavenEye's Wi-Fi network, the light on the back will turn green, and when you go to your Ronin app, you can click this link on the bottom and you will enter the live view for your RavenEye. If you set everything up correctly now, you should be able to see the live view, control your settings, and initiate active track from your app, and your RS2 and camera should respond to the Ronin app. If your Ronin app, RS2, or camera still isn't working right, now we'll go over some of the common troubleshooting and problems that I ran into when using this entire setup. The first one is camera setup. For controlling the camera with the Ronin app, you'll have to use the appropriate camera control cable. Even then, you may run into some weird things still. These things had to do with my camera, and I had to actually go into my camera and turn off a few settings. One of the things I had to turn off was control with smartphone. This is specific to Sony cameras, but maybe your camera is experiencing something like this. On the Sony, go to Menu, Network, which is the globe, and on page 1, select Control with Smartphone again, and turn this off. The second mode I had to adjust on my camera was how it was used as a USB-C device when it was plugged in. My camera immediately went into mass storage mode, and you'll want to turn this off on Sony cameras by going to Menu, go to Setup, and on page 4, select the USB connection. Set this to PC remote. This will prevent your camera from entering mass storage mode when you plug the camera control cable in, and it will allow you to control your camera from the gimbal and the app. This may be different from camera to camera, but if you plug your camera in and it goes into a different mode that you're not anticipating, pretty much any mode other than what your camera normally looks like, then your RS2 and Ronin app probably won't be able to talk to them. So go through, if you're using a Canon or a Nikon or Fuji, go through your menu system and check out your USB-C or camera control cable port settings. Now getting to some of your questions you had on my RS2 tips and tricks video. Don writes, I'm trying to set up my RS2 in A7 III, but I'm stuck setting up the RavenEye. Works with the display at the same time the record in the app. I haven't seen in your video doing that, or is there something wrong with this feature? There are potentially two different ways you can go about this question. One is you want to use the app to trigger your camera recording, which in that case, make sure you're using the correct camera control cable, and the app will actually record when you press the record button in your app. That will trigger your camera to record. But if you want to record on your camera, but in the Ronin app, you can do this as well. Just don't connect the camera control cable, and when you press the record button in the Ronin app, your app will just record your screen that is being sent from your camera. This will save the video directly to your device. It will be a much lower quality than your camera, obviously, but if you want to quickly send a clip to someone or just post it on social media, this is actually a pretty great way to do it. A person who wishes to stay anonymous asked, RavenEye isn't allowing active track to work. I can select a target, but my camera doesn't follow. Is my RS2 and RavenEye broken? The short answer here is no. I think I know what's wrong because I did the same thing multiple times and I've learned this lesson. You're probably using the wrong USB-C port on the front of the gimbal. I was using the RavenEye in the top slot of the USB-C slots on the RS2, and everything seemed to be working fine. I could still get a video feed in my Ronin app, but active track just wouldn't work. So assuming you have everything hooked up properly, it's probably just moving the camera control cable to the correct slot, which for the RavenEye is the very bottom slot. It's a frustrating error to get because there really is no error in the app. You can use the feed and you can select active track still, but if you select a target and move your gimbal, it'll just completely ignore the active track. So it feels like it's broken, but maybe you're just using the wrong port. Don asked that, is it normal that I can't adjust ISO or aperture in the app? Again, this can be one of two problems. You could have a wrong camera control cable, or your USB-C slot could be wrong in the front of the RS2. So I would check your camera control cable compatibility, and I would also check which slot you're plugging in your USB-C into the front of your gimbal. One last question. Mo asked, cable management is very difficult. I have a field monitor and I'm using an HDMI cable to plug my Sony into it. Causes the weight to disrupt the balance of the gimbal. It is also impossible to use the joystick to pan left and right because it will pull on the cable. How do I deal with that? I already responded to Mo on YouTube, but I will throw it into this video because I think it's actually a really good question. And I would say, one, you can just use a longer HDMI cable, but you're going to run into the cable management issue here. Just by using a cable that's longer, you'll take the tension off of your gimbal that has the monitor as well as your camera, but you're just going to be left with more slack than you need. One awesome solution to this is Atomos sells a coiled HDMI cable. It is a little expensive, but if you are using your monitor and your camera and you're running into this problem a lot, the Atomos cable is a really great solution. I tried to find mine and I have no idea where it is. I think it's in a bin somewhere, but it is a great cable, but it is a little bit expensive. It takes the tension off of your camera, but that coil also allows you to pan your camera. And when you're panning it, the coil will extend. So it's not going to completely pull on one or the other, either your monitor or your camera. So again, this is a expensive cable, but if you don't want to get around the cable management of just using a longer HDMI cable, this is a great solution. I'm not sure why there's a lack of documentation with the RS2 and the RavenEye. I feel like even a little bit of docs would have went a long way. It's a little complicated to get set up, but once you get everything configured properly, it really makes using the gimbal and your camera a lot nicer. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. If you didn't enjoy this video, share it with someone you don't like. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.